Good evening from BBC London and welcome to a special programme as we reflect on the life and legacy of Queen Elizabeth and her impact on the capital. For most of us, she was the only monarch we've ever known. Many people have been leaving tributes outside royal residences, including at Buckingham Palace, where, as we've seen this afternoon, King Charles greeted the waiting crowds. But right across our city, people have been remembering in their own way. Wendy Hurrell gives us a sense of the mood here in the capital.
At noon, the bells tolled from church towers across the capital to honour Queen Elizabeth II at St Martin in the Fields and Westminster Abbey. London life carries on, but with a palpably sombre atmosphere. There is a quiet, pensive flow of people, some carrying flowers from Green Park Station towards Buckingham Palace, and on their faces, reflection. Perhaps we're thinking beyond the death of the only monarch we've ever known and thinking of family and friends who are also gone. Perhaps there is an imperceptible feeling that we're leaving them in another era, the second Elizabethan reign, and an acknowledgement that within this monumental collective milestone, there is something personal. One of the Queen's final public engagements was at a hospice just outside Windsor.
It was barely 8 weeks ago that she was here to open our new hospice. It's quite a challenging thing to meet the Queen and to escort her round the hospice, but she made me and everybody else feel relaxed, and it was such a privilege. I can't tell you how great it was. It'll be something I will treasure for the whole of my life.
At Hammersmith Academy in West London, a moment's silence, the young people thoughtful about the future without our longest reigning monarch.
My whole life I've had the Queen on the throne rather than anyone else, and it's going to be quite strange not to get a Christmas message from her and stuff.
Even though we knew it was coming, it was still just weird to see someone who's such a massive British figure just be gone. So it's going to be strange her not being on the throne anymore.
Outside theatres and high above the streets, images of the Queen, reminders of her passing. The huge LED billboard at Piccadilly Circus, a gathering point for people from all around the world, wanting to mark this moment in history.
We just wanted to be around, been to Buckingham Palace, seeing the flowers, seeing the messages, just being around Central London feels nice, somewhere nice to reflect about her reign.
Their pilgrimage takes them also to Buckingham Palace.
We're going to lay some flowers down, I thought, from one corgi lover to another, so yes, and seemed like the right time to come and do it today.
Theresa May.
Meanwhile, inside the House of Commons, political figures remembered the Queen. Theresa May sharing an embarrassing anecdote from a royal picnic.
I picked up some cheese, put it on a plate and was transferring it to the table. The cheese fell on the floor. I had a split-second decision to make. I picked up the cheese, put it on the plate and put it on the table. And I turned round to see that my every move had been watched very carefully by Her Majesty the Queen. I looked at her, she looked at me, and she just smiled.
So all sorts of emotions for Londoners today, all equally valid, as we face together a rather surreal and unsettling change in our lives.
Just some reflections there. Let's head to the Mall now, which has seen a steady flow of people all day. Victoria Hollins is there. Hi, Victoria.
Is walk around London and you can feel the impact that the Queen has had on this city in so many places, whether it's the conversations on the tube, whether it's the pictures on walls and billboards, or whether it's here in the Mall, as you say. For hours, all day, thousands of people have been walking up and down here to pay their tributes at Buckingham Palace. London, of course, is used to having the eyes of the world on it, and for so many years, the main reason for that was often the Queen herself. London has been the stage for some of the most significant events of the 7 decades of the Queen's reign, from the celebrations, the historical events, and the moments of national mourning. Princess Elizabeth was born in Bruton Street in Mayfair, then moved to a lavish house in Piccadilly. Then it was Buckingham Palace that became home. And it was here on the balcony overlooking Green Park and St James's Park that many of the historical moments of her life would be marked, including VE Day and the end of World War II.
Outside Buckingham Palace, the crowds cheered themselves hoarse. 7 times during VE Day, the royal family appeared on the balcony.
And Londoners could always be relied on to line the streets for her life's significant events, including her coronation in June 1953.
The settings have long been in place. The stage is already crowded. The scene is set.
Street parties too became a theme of Elizabeth's reign. Nowhere more than during her jubilees. Her Silver Jubilee in 1977, when there were more than 4,000 street parties in London alone. Then in 2002, the Golden Jubilee. And in 2012, the Diamond Jubilee celebrations.
I'm so glad I didn't stay at home, even if it's raining, who cares?
They included a vast pageant when the Thames played a starring role with a flotilla along the river. And in June this year, more street parties for the weekend of Platinum Jubilee celebrations. London was the backdrop too for the challenges and tragedies the Queen faced during her reign. The death of Princess Diana saw demands for Elizabeth to share her personal grief with the world. After pressure mounted, she returned to the capital, facing criticism she was out of touch.
Judging by the people who were around me and their comments, we're pleased she's back and we feel better now.
When a terror attack struck London in 2005, leaving 52 people dead,
She has some trouble, was it coming in too quickly?
the Queen visited the workers who'd been involved in the emergency response. But there were also the regular commitments of royal life, the opening of London's buildings, like New Scotland Yard. And Her Majesty attended every Chelsea flower show for 50 years. This year she used a buggy to tour 10 gardens, one of the last public appearances of her reign. Her Majesty also had a ringside seat for the huge physical changes in London, including its transport network, like the opening of the Docklands Light Railway in 1987. And more than 30 years later, in May this year, she marked the completion of Crossrail, which took her name, the Elizabeth Line, at Paddington. She described it as spectacular. In 2012, the world was watching as London played host to the Olympic Games. The Queen featured in the opening ceremony, but she also toured the transformed area of East London and met some of the 70,000 Olympic volunteers. This year, the Queen achieved a milestone never reached by any other British monarch, 70 years on the throne.
70 years? Extraordinary, isn't it?
London was the stage for festivities seen around the world. But these would be the last public celebrations of Queen Elizabeth II's life. Her reign, which spanned so many generations, is over. Her death is more than the end of an era. It's an end of a life of duty, of dedication, and of service.
OK, let's talk to Alice van der Krave now, because you've got some advice for anyone wanting to pay their respects.
That's right. Well, lots of people have, of course, been laying flowers at our royal palaces, and there are now designated places for this to happen. So if you're heading to Buckingham Palace, a memorial flower garden will be created in Green Park from tomorrow. That will be the main place for laying flowers near Buckingham Palace. And if you're in Windsor, flowers can be laid on the Long Walk. Now, there are no physical books of condolence at royal residences, but you can sign an online book of condolence on the royal family website, and there will be opportunities to sign books of condolence at various town halls and local authorities all around the capital. It's best to check the website. There will also be religious services, of course, taking place across the capital this weekend. Westminster Abbey, for example, is currently open for prayer closed to visitors though. And Neasden Temple, for example, will be holding special prayers for the Queen this weekend.
And thinking about events this weekend, worth mentioning that there are cancellations to be aware of.
There are sports cancellations, yes. So the football's off, from the Premier League down to grassroots matches. Horse racing will return on Sunday. Other sports going ahead. Cricket, golf and the rugby will play on, but of course many of those fixtures will be observing a minute's silence.
And it's fair to say the capital will look and feel very different over the coming days.
Yes, lots of events and changes taking place in the next few days and weeks. And to give you a sense of the scale of what is happening in London, you can expect to see around 10,000 police officers on the streets on duty. Now, the Met says that leading up to the Queen's funeral, it is the biggest security operation that the country has ever seen. All leave and training for them is likely to be cancelled, and they're calling in extra help from surrounding forces. So this is an unprecedented time for many of us. We at BBC London will, of course, be keeping across everything, keeping people updated. And there's more detail on the Queen's lying in state and the funeral on the BBC website.
OK, Alice, yes, we will be keeping everyone abreast of developments. Thank you so much. Well, away from central London, Her Majesty the Queen spent much of her time at Windsor Castle, of course, a place very close to her heart. Asad Ahmad is there for us this evening. Hi, Asad.
Riz, everyone knew that Windsor would get busy today with people coming from both near and far to pay their respects to the Queen. What's been interesting, though, is that almost everyone who comes down here comes with their own personal sense and feeling of loss. Earlier I was down Windsor High Street, just a short distance from where I am now. There was a long line of people, many of them carrying flowers to bring here, and there was almost like an eerie silence, a silence as people reflected and remembered the Queen. The Queen herself had a very special place in her heart for both the people of Windsor and the place itself. Windsor wasn't just a place to live for the Queen, it was part of who she was. The name of the area, the town, the castle, was also her name, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor. The Queen's grandfather, King George V, chose the name reflecting the close links of the area with the monarchy. And it was here, in Windsor, that it all started. In 1952, the formal announcement that Princess Elizabeth would become Queen.
God save the Queen.
Like any family home, Windsor has been the focal point of celebrations and sadness. The young Princess Elizabeth spent lots of time with her family at Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park. In World War II, Princess Elizabeth and her sister Margaret were moved from Buckingham Palace to Windsor Castle for her own safety, away from German bombs. Their parents wanted the girls to have as normal a life as possible. They joined the Girl Guides and were encouraged to mix with local children.
During the campfire sing-song, which is attended by Her Majesty the Queen, there's an alert, and the girls take cover in slit trenches. It's a case of good camp discipline rather than respect for the buzz bomb. Do you recognize the princesses from above?
It was why, when the Queen had her own children, she brought them to Windsor for a taste of what she had enjoyed.
In the gardens of Frogmore House, Windsor Castle, Her Majesty was seen in the role of mother during a few days' respite from all cares of state.
But then on the 20th of November 1992, the royal residence and centuries of history went up in flames. At one point, the Queen went into the wreckage to help supervise the operation to rescue works of art. But with around 20% of the castle destroyed, Her Majesty had lost much of her home.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
As restoration work began, the Queen for the first time opened the doors of Buckingham Palace to the public. It was to help pay for some of the renovation. And as Windsor Castle started to take shape, it returned to being the focal point of some of the Queen's most memorable moments. The Queen's Golden Jubilee in 2002, doing what she always did so well and clearly enjoyed, meeting the public, her adoring fans. In 2005, her eldest son married for a second time in Windsor Guildhall, also known as Windsor's Town Hall. 2016, and the Queen enjoyed a 90th birthday cake made especially for her by Great British Bake Off winner Nadia Hussain. Her only question: it's very exciting, but which bit does one cut? But among the saddest events of the Queen's life was at St George's Chapel, Windsor, the funeral service of her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, in 2021. During a time of COVID, when restrictions at funerals and gatherings were in place, the Queen sat and mourned alone, wearing a face mask after 73 years of marriage. Yet the Queen carried on to her Platinum Jubilee. Her support and bond with the people of Windsor was never one to weaken, as this royal borough accepted Queen Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor as one of their own.
The Queen's heartfelt connection with Windsor. Now, I just wanted to say thank you, by the way, for sharing some of your memories of the Queen. Here is Tolu Adeoye with some of them.
The memories you sent us span decades. This is Jo from Hertfordshire presenting a bouquet to the Queen at the premiere of Born Free at the Odeon in Leicester Square in 1966. It was Wayne's son Ashton who met Her Majesty in 2015 at Barking and Dagenham's 50th anniversary. He thought his son was fibbing when he first told the family he was to meet her. Edwina was a student at the University of London when she met the Queen in 1992.
In my excitement, I shouted out, "We love you, Queenie!" And she turned around, came over to me and asked how I was, whether I was a student there, all about my course. She was very, very friendly.
Shannon sent us this of her grandma Cecilia meeting the Queen in 1961, a moment she said her late grandma then spoke of for the rest of her life. The Queen was often smiling in the photos you sent us. Sharon's mother met her in the late 70s at work. She's second from the right.
I remember that day when my mum came home so happy. She came home with a beaming smile because not only had she met Queen Elizabeth II, but I remember poignantly that she said she really was encouraged, and she encouraged the rest of her colleagues.
Not everyone who got in touch had met the Queen. Nevertheless, there were cherished moments. Jo's daughter Ottilie loved taking her corgi Rex to visit Buckingham Palace last year. Jessica's kids, Ethan, Sienna and Dylan, enjoyed celebrating the Jubilee this year. They absolutely adored the Queen, she told us. Memories to last a lifetime and stories to be passed on to future generations.
And do keep your memories of the Queen coming in. We'd love to see your photos or videos. Perhaps you were at the palace today and caught a glimpse of the new King. You can email us hello@bbc.co.uk. Time now, though, for a check on the weather with Gorsa. Hello there.
Hello, Riz. Thank you. Well, we have had some hefty showers in places today, and we'll continue to see some for a time this evening. And some of these were captured by our weather watchers. You can see this big towering shower cloud over Islington earlier today. But the area of low pressure that's brought the showers today, in fact, all week, finally does clear out into the North Sea overnight tonight. A brief ridge of high pressure then builds for this weekend, so it will be mostly dry. But we are keeping an eye on this next system that's in the Atlantic, and that may bring some rain to the north of us, to the north of the UK. But let's see, we'll keep you up to date, of course. But for the rest of this evening, those showers will continue for a time, but they'll fade away. And then overnight tonight, it does become largely dry. There'll be clear spells, and with the light winds too, there is the chance of some patches of mist and fog forming, especially by the early hours. And it does remain quite mild too, with temperatures holding up in double figures. So for tomorrow, the start of the weekend, any mist and fog will clear, and there'll be a mixture of variable cloud, some sunny spells, and we can't rule out the odd isolated shower likely coming in from the north, and temperatures climbing up to around the low 20s, so 21 to 22 Celsius. For tomorrow night too, there'll be some patches of mist and fog again, but by Sunday morning that will tend to clear and we're looking at another largely dry day. There'll be some spells of sunshine, there'll be some patchy cloud, 1 or 2 isolated showers, but mostly dry. And temperatures again climbing up to maybe 22 or 23 Celsius. So if you are planning to head to any of the royal palaces this weekend to pay your respects, it should be mostly dry. And for Monday too, dry as well, and temperatures climbing up to around the mid-20s. So generally dry weather for the next few days. Some uncertainty with the detail for next week. We will, of course, keep you updated. But that's it for now. Back to you, Riz.
Thank you. And thanks to you for being with us on this, the day the capital paused to remember Her Majesty the Queen and her son returned to London as the new king. We'll leave you tonight with just some of the images from the capital on this historic day. From all of us here, bye-bye.